computer is our tool. It's the new pencil.
People who tour these galleries often say, wow, I had no idea. Many think computing is about scientists, engineers, and mathematicians. But if you've ever texted, emailed, shopped online, or streamed a video, you know computing is about you. When computers meet movie making, amazing things can happen. Shrek wins the heart of Princess Fiona. Simba becomes the Lion King. Computer animation in the hands of talented storytellers has changed our Hollywood experience forever. In this episode of Revolutionaries, we'll learn how those box office blockbusters take shape. Meet Dreamworks Animation Chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg and his Chief Technology Officer Ed Leonard in conversation with Silicon Valley innovator Phil McKinney.
I want to take a little bit of time to introduce Jeffrey and Ed. Jeffrey, as John had said, is the CEO and co-founder of Dreamworks Animation. And for some of you may not realize this, but Dreamworks Animation is the largest animation studio in the world, having released 23 full-length animated feature films. And we all know the brands, right? Shrek, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, my favorite. How to Train Your Dragon, albeit I haven't seen Puss in Boots yet.
What are you waiting for? We need the biz.
It's on the docket for the weekend. But also, Dreamworks has been, and Jeffrey's been a leader in the industry, driving the technology innovations that we all enjoy, such as the first to release, all the films in 3D. Dreamworks decided to go full 3D, and the first studio to release 3 computer-generated feature films in 3D in a single year. Prior to Dreamworks, Jeffrey was chairman of the Walt Disney Studios. He oversaw landmark films such as Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Little Mermaid, Lion King, and Beauty and the Beast. Along with Jeffrey, Ed Leonard. Ed is the Chief Technology Officer at Dreamworks, and where he's provided the technology vision and the leadership there. Ed's has enabled Dreamworks really to achieve a number of firsts. One is the transition from conventional animation to 100% computer generated, the adoption of Linux, choosing Linux as a platform for all of their workflows. Also, okay, we've got the open source community is sitting over on that side of the auditorium here, right? Look out, Ed, you're going to get an open source question. I can see it coming now. Globalization of the studios and tools to enable Dreamworks really to be the first studio to go 100% 3D. And so I want to do is, again, welcome Jeffrey and Ed to the Computer History Museum. So as John said, I'm one of the trustees here at the museum, and our mission here at the museum is really to capture and share the history of computing. And tonight we're being joined by Jeffrey and Ed, who've had an unbelievable impact in shaping the history of animation. This evening we're going to bring these two together. We're going to bring the history of computing and the history of animation together and chat about how this plays out, what's the role of computing technology and in the role of the animation, and how that all works, and really also get a chance to hear from really the two leaders in the industry about what's coming next, where's the future going. So, Jeffrey, when you think about, and I look back at your career, it was 1984, right, when you took control of Disney Animation. What was it, when you think about the technology, did technology have a role back in Disney? 84, there really wasn't much available to it, but.
Well, first I should tell you about my very first day at work in 1984. I had come from running the Paramount studio. I ran the live action division. I was 34 years old. I had been there since I was 23, had grown up through the company. My first day when I arrived at Disney, I went to Michael Eisner's office. He was the CEO of the company, and I'd worked for Michael for 9 years over at Paramount. And I came in with my to-do list of things that I, sort of my priorities, and said, here's what, I think are the very first things that we need to sort of get done to get business up and running at the studio. And I had gone through, and he had said, great, terrific, and I had gotten to the door, and I was on my way out the door, and he said, "Hey, Jeffrey, one more thing before you leave." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Come over here. I want to show you something." And we walked to his window, and he looked out the window and pointed to a building across the street. And he said, at the studio, and he said, "Do you know what they? You see the building over there?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you know what they do there?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, that's where they make the animated movies." I said, "Really? That's interesting." He said, "Yeah, that's your problem." So that was my introduction to animation. I was not a student of it. I really didn't know anything about it. Like, I think most people had probably seen a handful of Disney animated movies as a kid. I remember seeing Pinocchio and as a kid and seeing that and being mesmerized by it. But I didn't really know anything about animation. Very quickly, really began a learning experience there. And the thing that's so fascinating is that one of the interesting attributes of many, many attributes, one of the really interesting ones about Walt Disney is that he had this amazing archive of his work product and the way in which he went about organizing and making his movies. And almost everything that he did was photographed, cataloged. There were people that went around and literally had these long memos that were captured the meetings and notes from his process of working with his animators. And so literally sitting within this incredible repository at Disney of this archives was a kind of a how-to manual. It was, I always used to say that Walt Disney left breadcrumbs the size of Volkswagens. You have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to be able to follow his path of what the essential elements of a great animated movie, a great animated story is. And interestingly enough, at the very core and essence of these films was technology. Walt Disney, as some people know, was an amazing technologist. He loved technology. He had a huge R&D department on the lot. He developed all kinds of unique cameras and various devices over the years in order to realize the visions that he had for his films. And he considered technology to be, of the essence to the process of making those films. And so it kind of is in the DNA of animation, from really the pioneer of the business.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, when Beauty and the Beast...
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, right? I'm giving you the option to say I'm wrong, right? Jeffrey's not...
At least I'm not up here competing with Watson, let's be clear. That's a break.
I don't know if I take that as a compliment or a shot.
It's a shot.
But, some of the movies that you did there were kind of the first ones really doing experiments with CG, like, Beauty and the Beast, the ballroom scene, right?
Yes. Well, the ones that I think are, of note that people have recognized over the years is the first 3D CG environment created was the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was so interesting to me and is, in fact, again, where we are today, if you either recall that scene or you go back and you look at it, what is so remarkable about it is that camera move is about a soaring emotional moment in the film. And there was the state-of-the-art technology being deployed in the finest possible way in support of a critical story moment. And it actually created and amplified what the artists and the filmmakers wanted for that moment. It's a giant sweeping camera move down the chandeliers into the room as Belle and Beast begin to this dance for the first time. And it so romanticized the moment. It so enhanced the moment of it. And that really was, a real breakthrough moment. Another was very important breakthrough for us was the wildebeest sequence in Lion King. And again, you think about just such a powerful and important emotional moment. This is where, Simba gets caught in this stampede, which ultimately, is responsible for the death of his father. And, just a very, very, very powerful emotional moment. And so this marriage of creativity and artistry and technology has been at the very core and the very essence of animation and our animation storytelling, right to today. You'll see it in Puss in Boots. There's really exceptional things that have been achieved by our technology department in support of the vision of the filmmakers.
So fast forward 94, you found Dreamworks.
That was the day I got fired. So now we talked about the day I got hired.
I'm bookending your stories here.
The day I got fired, right? Okay. That's a remarkable moment too. You think so? In 1994, the Walt Disney Studios had the #1 show on Broadway, Beauty and the Beast. Had the #1 television show on the air, a show called Home Improvement with Tim Allen. See, everything just goes around and around in our world. And we had the #1 movie in Lion King, and I got fired. Makes sense. It's Hollywood.
But when you started Dreamworks, you put technology right there as part of you saw the vision of what technology was going to do to enable that storytelling, right? So
yes, again, I have to say, all roads lead back to Walt Disney for me. I just feel like he was my tutor and teacher. I never met him, but I feel as though I had learned through this great repository of his all these great lessons. And yes, from day one, we were committed to creating a state-of-the-art technology campus that we built down in Glendale. And 14 years later, we continue to embrace, need, love, the newest, latest, greatest. You're on the receiving end. Do you know anybody who has a more voracious appetite that wants what you got first, free?
Yeah. Key word, free. So
we support it back.
So Ed, from the standpoint of, a lot of people don't realize what happens from the standpoint, why technology is such critical for DreamWorks' ability to create the films from a technology platform.
Sure.
Why don't you talk a little bit about what that role of technology plays? It's not just a back office traditional IT thing.
Yeah, I think one of the first films that I worked on was actually that wildebeest stampede with Jeffrey at Disney, and I think from the transition from that Beauty in the Ballroom scene to the wildebeest stampede, there was a change from an optimization and efficiency use of computers, digital ink and paint in the early days, to really a creative tool. And if you look at the arc of the last 15 years or 20 years in our business, technology now is rooted at the anchor of everything that we do. I mean, technology, the computer is our tool. It's the new pencil. And so for our business, staying at the very leading edge of what we do, bringing worlds to life in ways that people haven't seen before, new characters, and every one of our films trying to outdo the last film, we've recognized, and largely to Jeffrey's leadership, technology is essential for what we do. And it's, on Tuesdays, the tech leads the art, and on Wednesdays, art leads the tech, and there is this insatiable appetite for more, bigger, and better. And technology has really become an integral part of achieving, our business result, our artistic result. And for us, it's just sort of natural in the way we live.
So here's interesting. We made Little Mermaid back in the mid-1980s. We're making the movie, and for various reasons, not unlike, I think many things, we got behind schedule and over budget, and needed to make some simplifications for it. And the character of the Ariel, the mermaid, The design of the character in the movie, if you look at all the colors, because at that time, inking and painting was done by hand. So literally, there was a building where inking and painting was done, and for each movie, there would be these jars of paints that were mixed, big, depending on what was going to be used for. Some of them very large, because we had to have consistency of color from the beginning of painting a movie to the end of it. So for Ariel, her design for her character had actually 12 colors. The fins and her hair, the great red hair and her eyes, and the difference in her skin tone and her lips. So that was the color palette as she was designed to be made. We got, as I said, behind schedule and over budget, and we ended up having to simplify her color palette from 12 paints to 7. And that simplification ended up actually saving an enormous amount of time and money. So you think about today, a movie like Puss in Boots has a color palette, quite literally, thousands and thousands and thousands of colors. And that detail allows a level of artistry that was unimaginable. And you just think about the short span of how much it's changed. That's technology.
Well, here, I think you talk about an interesting issue, though, right? Because here you are, you've got artists, people trying to tell the story. They've got this great vision of how they want to tell the story. And you got technologists. I can imagine there's probably some pretty interesting conversations about vision and dream, and how do you bring the technology around to support that.
So people always ask, what comes first, chicken or the egg? So in this case, the answer is yes. So here's the way that works in our world. We have a group of artists, they come together, they're going to make a movie called How to Train Your Dragon. And the directors of the movie design a sequence, and they go, we have a dragon, it breathes fire, it's going to go underwater, and it needs to shoot fire. And they turn to Ed, and he goes,
Yes. I got 5 years. I'll figure it out.
Are you crazy? And so honestly, it's in that very specific instance, you think of the end battle sequence in How to Train Your Dragon, quite literally, you have toothless, fire-breathing dragon has to go underwater where the ship sinks. It's, and all of that created with a sense of realism. It's not realistic. We don't do photorealistic. We don't actually even really like photorealistic. We try and create our own reality, so there's a realism to it, one in which our audience feels as though that world is something they can relate to in it. And so there was a very, very big, very ambitious, never done before creative idea, important to the story and the storytelling, and we turned to our 300 engineers and designers in our R&D and say, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? And that begins a really interesting process that goes on for doing it. It also works the other way, and as you know, Phil, because you've been very much involved in a couple of very interesting and strategic initiatives that we've done where we've decided to raise the entire platform and to give it capabilities that'll serve across all of our movies. And those are some of the most ambitious R&D efforts that are being done anywhere in the world in terms of graphic imaging and digital image creation and how to have consistent color and how to really simplify the use of tools, and so God bless you. So that it does drive both ways.
Right. And Jeffrey's mentioning one specific example. Ed and I were having a conversation at NAB, and Ed comes up and says, Jeffrey's got this. And as soon as I hear Jeffrey's got this, I'm like, okay, uh-oh. It was when we started the work on the Dreamcolor monitors. Jeffrey wants this monitor.
Well, explain why, Ed, because it's a really interesting...
It's an important issue.
Yeah.
For our business, obviously, color is super important, and being able to walk from artist desk to the next desk and be able to see the same color consistency, going to our theater, see the same color. And so we designed a process around using normal CRT, $700 or $800 displays in our pipeline, and we got pretty good at it. And we'd have guys run around with calibration pucks, and we got to the place where we can manage color fidelity super easy and to a very high quality. And then somewhere along the road, somebody decided that CRTs were no longer cool and interesting to make. Everything should be flat panel, and so within about 2 seconds, it was literally like 3 months, the entire world just stopped making CRTs.
We bought like thousands of them and
Yeah.
put them in warehouses because we went, oh my God, what are we going to do?
And the problem with the CRTs, the CRTs solve their problem. The problem with the flat panel displays is everybody's very excited about their cost and their thinness and their light, but color sucked. And color consistency was really hard to manage. And so, and nobody seemed to really care a lot about this problem. And so the gap we were trying to fill here was a $700 monitor and then a $25,000 monitor that could actually do color. The middle went away when CRTs went away. And so that conversation at NAB was really a challenge to Phil to say, Phil, this is not only a problem for us today, but the world has a problem. We need to fill this gap for people who really care about high fidelity color. Can you help us figure out how to get a flat panel monitor that's not $25,000 that can actually replace CRTs? And that was one of many sort of collaborative development efforts that we did.
The interesting point here is, Ed's telling me this, oh, color's important. I'm like, okay, how important is it? Really, I was nodding yes, because skeptical. So one of my many visits down, I'm meeting with Ed and the team, and Ed's going, I'm going to prove to you how important the color is. So he brings up a CRT. He goes in and he just tweaked the color just a little bit. And he brings in one of his top animation artists, and the animation artist looks at it and goes, your blue's off by 2. I go, got it. I'm now convinced.
So the great thing about it, which is what we have found, and this is where both our sort of big, strategic partners in both HP and Intel, who I really consider like our godparents. One's a godmother, one's a godfather, in that what our needs are that we have today, we're at the top of the waterfall, and solving a problem for us today solves a problem for everybody tomorrow. And the fact is, if you think about it, having great color fidelity across all your devices would actually be a very valuable and a meaningful improvement to consumers and to consumer electronics. And so in the same way that people embrace Dolby for sound, we felt there was a way of getting, and so we created Dream Color, and Dream Color has actually managed to make its way out. Hasn't quite made it down into the consumer marketplace, but certainly in the professional marketplace, many tens of thousands of monitors have been created out there, and is sort of a building brand, and it will make its way into the consumer marketplace.
So there is this challenge of how do you stay ahead? So but Dreamworks has a little bit of a unique approach versus being the traditional consumer of technology. But actually, we talked about Dream Color, but there's other examples about how you drive technology. And I want to talk a little bit about this whole philosophy of how you bring the partners in early rather than just wait for it to be commercially available.
So just a little context for the amount of computing that we need to do in animated film. Generally, a single animated film takes about 5 years to make, generally 200 to 300 people working over the course of that 5 years. And during that 5 years, typical films today, like Puss in Boots, consume about 60 million CPU render hours over the course of that film. Now, we have 8 or 10 of those going at once, so you can start to get a little bit of understanding of what the scale is. And so for us early on, we recognized that we can't continue to expand and build our data centers on campus. They just are very expensive. And so we partnered with HP on something we called Utility Rendering Service, and it's probably, probably close to 10 years ago now. It was really one of the first things we did where we didn't talk much about it publicly, but we set up a render facility at HP Labs in Palo Alto, and we snuck a wire over, and we did secure cloud computing through HP, and so that was a great experiment. It led us to discover how to do that for ourselves, and today, we're moving very quickly to most of our rendering to being in the cloud, over half of it this year in the cloud.
Right. And you were talking a little bit about, the compute time, the amount of complexity that, I don't think people have an appreciation of how, having now been involved with and watching, as a partner with Dreamworks all these years and seeing the process, the complexity of bringing it all together down to that final moment to render the final film. So, we didn't here in this valley, we all ruled by Moore's law, but, and Ed, I've heard you talk about this before about Shrek's law. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about how much compute went from the original Shrek film to all the way through the sequence. 'Cause I think it helps give people how fast, what the role of innovation in the industry here in the Valley has a play for you and your ability to do these films.
Yeah, if you look back at, just for comparison, Shrek 1 used about 5 million CPU render hours. If you fast forward 2 years later when we released the second Shrek, it basically doubled. And if you look at Shrek 3 and Shrek 4, basically every sequel doubles. So about every 2 years, we double the amount of computation, which we've coined Shrek's law. And so for us, every film aspires to do a little bit better than the last film. Processors get faster, computers get faster, but we also use more. And so the idea of the cloud, which is really important to giving us creative flexibility, is once we're in the cloud, then we have the ability to scale compute with ambition. Mm-hmm. So we're no longer constrained to what's in our data centers. Building data centers isn't fast or cheap, but scaling into the cloud gives us a lot more opportunity to be.
And because we only we have 2 movies a year, we go through huge peaks and valleys, and nobody can build for those peaks.
Right.
And that's why, again, sort of cloud as a commodity became so valuable and impactful for us. Just to put in perspective for everybody, we spend about $1.7 million to produce a minute of film.
1.7 million per minute
of film.
Jeffrey, you spent a good chunk of your career, people think of you as kind of a Hollywood insider, yet you spend a lot of time here in the Valley talking and looking at the latest tech. And in fact, I would argue over the years that I've known you, you're becoming much more, you're definitely coming to the tech side of the aisle. But I think of you really as being the person in Hollywood that's bringing this convergence, bringing tech and Hollywood together. Because it's not just what you do here, the work that you've done with Cameron on 3D, the two of you really being kind of the push behind 3D, not only in animation, but 3D as a whole. It's just one example.
Well, again, I'm fascinated by the power of technology and its ability to actually support and drive creativity. But I actually think that today, which is why I find myself spending more and more time here, is I think the two have intersected in what we do, but I don't think they've converged. And I actually think we are right now at the cusp of a convergence in which the skills and the processes and the software that we use today in creating the work that you're seeing is about to finally move into social media. And there is going to be another great revolution that is moments away from happening and where these two are going to converge, and we'd like to be somewhere in the mix of all of that.
So when you say they converges to social media, give us an example of what
I
you're
guess
thinking.
Just the sort of the simplest way I can sort of articulate it and tend to think about it is that the revolution that has occurred for all of us in this last 10 or 15 years, which is these amazing devices that allow us to communicate, collaborate, socially interact, discover. What they've done is that they've actually put instantly in our hands and in our lives something that is text-based. To me, the next big step for us will be moving from text-based communication, collaboration, information. Is imagine if you could do what you do in texting or for certainly a good amount of it, if it were as simple and easy as that, and it was rich media.
Right.
It was talking and listening and watching, which are completely natural to all of us.
So this gets into another question, which is, you think about all of the things that compete for people's attention today, right? Movies are one, TV's another, the user-generated content that's on the web. How does DreamWorks stay ahead? I mean, you talk a little bit about the social piece, but I mean, it's the attention issue.
Well, again, it's harder and harder to compete, and it's part of why our attention is we continue to put everything that we can to raise the bar on these animated movies, to make them events, to make them really, really special for people, because if you don't honor your customer today, you go away pretty quick. And so our ambition in everything that we do is actually to amaze a moviegoer, is to deliver above and beyond their expectations. And that's a very, very high bar to have to create to. And Puss in Boots on its second week did as much as it did on its first week. That's 100% about word of mouth. And so, it seems as though we've actually, hit a chord in which there's something going on with people seeing that movie, that it's as good as or more than what they expected, and that has, caused that sort of the most powerful thing, which is word of mouth, to go on.
Is DreamWorks keeping as good of records of its creative and tech process as the Disney archives?
Yeah, we're pretty good at it, I have to say. In terms of the creative process, the answer is yes. And think about today how easy that is. In Walt Disney's time, quite literally, there was a staff of stenographers who followed him meeting to meeting, and photographers that, literally took down every word that he said. Now, they don't take down my words, let me assure you. They're not that important, and they're not that good. But the filmmaking process, in terms of documenting that and having that learning process, today, you talk about in terms of very specifically 3D, we have more knowledge, experience in creating 3D imaging than any other company in the world. We've made more movies in 3D. We have created more tools for 3D creation than anybody else, have more software that we've adapted, and every movie for us is a learning experience, and that reservoir is passed from movie to movie to movie, and that just actually doesn't exist anywhere else in the world today.
So it seems like we have a lot of people in the audience who are all students going into the animation industry. So we have lots of questions.
We like that.
For advice. Sure. So I'm going to give you two questions. I'll ask them both and ask you to answer them. As a student animator, what aspect of technology should I be focusing on? And then a second question, this one kind of has a little preamble. As a soon-to-be graduate in digital animation and world languages and cultures, unique degree combination, what advice would you give someone starting out in the animation industry?
Well, first of all, I would say there's never been a better time, greater opportunity in the field of animation, and 5 of the top 10 movies in the world last year were CG animated movies. Mm-hmm. So we're no longer a little cottage industry, and we are no longer a niche, and we're no longer in a cartoon ghetto. All places that animation existed in for a very long time. And so the need for great talent in the animation field has never been greater than it is today, and there are lots of opportunities. And interestingly, the person who has the language experience is actually very valuable also, because we actually translate our movies into 46 languages. So there's a good value of marrying those two skills together. And I would just say, if you were today, you wanted to have the trifecta, it would be a quality artistic skill somewhere in animation. Now, you got to remember, there are many different skill sets within animation, and speak Chinese. You're going to be in really, really, really high demand.
And a computer science degree.
Yeah, a
let's have
computer
that in
science
there.
degree.
Well, so Ed, this question's for you. I have to do this, otherwise the open source guys will beat me up in the alley out back. What distribution of Linux do you use?
I think that's a plant from the Red Hat guys. That's what I think. We use Red Hat.
So you guys are Red Hat. Jeffrey, can you share your thoughts about the stalled adoption of 3D technology in the home?
Yeah, I think we have to it's a double whammy here. The first thing is that, we got off to such a fantastic start in the movie theaters, really driven, principally, first and foremost by really three films kind of launched it out into the world. Monsters vs. Aliens, Avatar just sent it to the moon, and then How to Train Your Dragon were really three very, very high-end quality experiences. Then, unfortunately, Hollywood came in, and there were some that saw this as just a opportunity for a quick buck to actually deliver a subpar 3D experience done cheaply. And you could raise ticket prices and make a bunch of money, and this is to dishonor your customer in the worst possible way. And so this incredible enthusiasm that existed for what was a really new, great innovation for an experience in a movie theater kind of got trashed. And so we lost the trust of our customers, which is nothing worse in the world that you can do in that.
Yep.
And we all got painted to some degree with the bad work that was done. And so we're now in what is, I think, a slow rebuild in which we are regaining and re-earning the trust of our customers. There's some fantastic 3D work going on today. Great filmmakers. Marty Scorsese's got a movie coming out in a few weeks. I haven't seen it, but I've told that the work is just absolutely beautiful. Spielberg's got a 3D film coming out at Christmas time, and I have seen, and the work is outstanding. And so great filmmakers using these great tools will make really unique experiences to be had in a movie theater. So at the same time, the opportunity is there for the home. And I think that there are a couple things that are, holding the home experience back from really taking off. The first and foremost is not enough product. And so it's very, when you're looking at, high-end, television monitors, purchasing them today, making that investment, the incremental cost for 3D, you want to know you're going to get use of it. And the problem is that, creating enough hours of 3D, quality 3D to be seen on a television set is just not really kind of hit a level that I think has excited people enough. The drivers of 3D in the home are going to be sports, and that is where much of the best work is being done, and in video gaming. Mm-hmm. And then the real breakthrough will come when we start to have auto stereo 3D without glasses, and that's not that far away. And I think that's part of what there is something, going into a movie theater for an hour and a half or 2 hours and putting on glasses and watching a movie, is something that people, the stigma of that, I mean, has sort of kind of gone away now, and the glasses are reasonably comfortable, and, but doing that in your own home, you feel like you're a stalker or something. I just feel a little weird. I'm going to put on glasses now and watch my TV. I don't know. So that's not that far away from You know, it's a handful of years away before we go to auto stereo, and I think that will allow it to that, and as I say, more product.
So here's an interesting question. What is the backstory to the DreamWorks animated opening for features? The boy sitting in the moon with the fishing line.
So the name DreamWorks, Spielberg and Geffen and myself were having lunch very early on, literally in the first couple of days of starting the company, and we didn't have a name yet, and we had asked our marketing people to give us lists of various names, and over lunch we just started piecing things together, and really kind of gravitated to the word dream. Just felt because we felt what we were doing was for each of us individually and collectively, this was very much a dream come true for us. Again, just to put in perspective for you, I go back to 1994, and Steven Spielberg had just won in March the Academy Award for Schindler's List, and he had put out maybe 2 months before I approached him about this. So Schindler, he won the Academy Award in March. In June, he put out Jurassic Park, which was the #1 movie of the year. David Geffen had sold his record company for the 4th or 5th time for another bazillion dollars to Universal, and I was fired. So it wasn't really a hard idea to come up and say, well, why don't we start a studio together? I have to say, what may go down as one of the great trades of all time is I gave up 1/3 of myself for 1/3 of Spielberg and 1/3 of myself for 1/3 of Geffen. And who do you think got the best of that deal? We got together, and honestly, this really was a dream for all three of us to be able to start this company. And we had raised, with the amazing support of Paul Allen, close to $2 billion to start the first studio in 65 years. So we came out of that lunch with literally just putting those two words together. And then Steven came up with the idea of the boy in the moon. And to tell you what he's fishing for ideas. So that was something that he actually came up with. We now have a Chinese version of it, and it's Po sitting there on the moon fishing for Chinese ideas.
So Jeffrey, the question in regards to DreamWorks, when you look at its market cap rather relative to Disney and Pixar, it's smaller. So how can a smaller company take the important technology and business risks? It's the size versus risk ratio. How risky do you go, and how conservative do you be for success?
Well, it's interesting. I have to say, I think maybe it's the inverse. The smaller you are and the sort of harder you try, the more risk embracing you tend to be. The beauty of DreamWorks is that we are, we have to be an innovative company. We are, we are risk takers in the best sense of it. Now, having said that, we've put out 16 movies, and every single movie, 16 out of 16 are profitable. But, we roll the dice on Friday night, 2 weekends ago, and, I've done this my whole life, and there's nothing more terrifying, I can't sleep on those Friday nights. By the way, there's nothing I can do about it, but it's just the most horrible feeling when, you've spent $130 million on a movie and another $170 million in marketing, and, you're just rolling the dice, and literally, they can tell you at 11 o'clock at night, you've just, laid a wet one at $300 million. And here's the roller coaster ride of it. So, you know, we took a gamble on opening Puss in Boots on a lesser weekend. One, because there were a couple of other comedies coming out on the next weekend. Number two, Halloween fell on a Monday, which it hasn't done in a number of years. There's a lot of family product coming at Thanksgiving, so we felt if we moved up a week, we would get an extra week of playing time before the competition. You know, the big family competition came in. And so we really sat there and did the math and said, listen, if we combine the 2 weekends together, we think it will give us a better platform. And we believed in the movie. We thought the word of mouth would be good about the film. And so we opened, not this last weekend, but 2 weekends ago, to $34 million, which is, in the world of what we do, believe it or not, a very disappointing opening. And, you know, people were expecting the movie to open in the $42 million. We were actually hoping in the mid-40s in this, and so it was a real disappointment. By the way, it was the biggest opening for any movie in the history of the movie business on the last weekend of October. So you know what? Whose expectations are cuckoo in that? Ours, yes. Theirs, for sure. In any event, so we have that, and on Monday morning, honest to God, you know, our stock goes down 10-15%. I'm a moron, failure. You know, we're out of the business. We're a dinosaur. Nobody wants to see animated movies anymore. It's the parade of horribles. I got on a plane. I went to China. And you think I'm kidding? I got on a plane. I went to China. I came back at 1 o'clock in the morning. I went to India from there. That's even further away from it all of it. Came back, and then this last weekend, the movie does $33 million, down from $34 million, and it's literally, in the history of the movie business, it's the best second week that any movie has ever had, other than when it went to a holiday. In other words, from weekend to weekend, without the next weekend being a holiday weekend. And so, in the history of the movie business, no movie has only fallen off 3% in its second week. You know, big film released in a couple of thousand theaters in this. And then this Monday, the stock's up 12%. I'm a genius. Dreamworks is on fire. You know, you're happy to have me here as a guest. Somebody showed up. This last Monday or Tuesday wouldn't have been so good. That's my life. It's tough. I'm not complaining. I love it. I have to be honest. It's what makes it interesting.
So
we take risks, and we need to take risks. And here's the way I always have thought about movies and movie making, which is, in order for us to delight and to surprise and to exceed the expectations of our audience, the requirement is that we are original and unique. Original and unique equals risky. If it's original and unique, who knows? You know, there's nothing in the past. And by the way, it's part of the problem of movies today is because they're so expensive. You know, they're not as original and unique. There's more sequels and more franchises, and even for us, I mean, it's part of, you know, that is part of why, you know, we've relied on franchises also in this. So we're not immune to it, but, you know, so original and unique equals risky. Risky equals failure. Sometimes, not always, but if you're going to be taking risks, you are going to fail. And so what we try and build into every aspect of our enterprise, including the movies, is we can fail, and it won't destroy the enterprise. So built into what we do, what we ask our artists to do, what we ask our filmmakers to do, what we ask our technologists to do, is we ask them to actually take enough to build into what we do, enough opportunity for failure that allows us to have enough opportunity to take risks, that allows us to be original and unique. And if you take this out, this is finished. So it's of the essence for us.
Ed, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
What's it like to work for Jeffrey?
It's exhausting keeping up with this guy, you know? No, I think, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who has, as you can see, more passion about what he does, works harder than he does, and he's a great mentor. I mean, one of the great things about working at Dreamworks is, it's really one of the best places to work. You can feel that you're part of something special, and it's inspiring, and it's catchy.
Being able to go to work and surrounded by the most talented artists in the world, and doing something that, and I've thought a lot about this over the years, that is really the most rewarding thing in the world. And so maybe it's a thing I can leave you with, which is that I would ask just everybody here, just for one moment, to do this, which is think about what is the most beautiful thing in the world to you. And just if you think about that, and I'll give you, it could be a person, a mate, spouse, a child, it could be a place, beautiful, beautiful place that you've been, the Taj Mahal, a Monet painting. There's so many different things that you could think about that are, in fact, in a way for you, that when you think of and you close your eyes and you think of what's beautiful, what pops into your head. So for me, the most beautiful thing in the world is laughter. And the most beautiful laughter in the world is that of a child. At Dreamworks Animation, we get up every day, and our job is to do something that creates laughter. And so I don't know how to have a better job than that.
Computing and animation, two partners with a vivid history, and it's still being written. Explore the history of computing, and you connect the past to the future. See you next time on the Computer History Museum presents Revolutionaries.